The WSIS Forum 2020 strives to create a meaningful virtual experience for WSIS stakeholders. The forum is an open and inclusive space for all, harnessing the potential of ICTs and accelerating the achievement of the SDGs through the implementation of the WSIS action lines. This year's theme is Fostering Digital Transformation and Global Partnerships, WSIS action lines for achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, featuring a variety of workshops. There have been 11 high-level policy sessions with over 100 panelists. These high-level sessions have been attended by a total of almost 1,400 users, with an average of 130 participants per session. The virtual exhibition space hosted more than 130 exhibitors from over 50 different countries. This year, the UN launched the Decade of Healthy Aging, and on this basis, the new track ICTs and Older Persons was successfully opened at the WSIS Forum 2020, with more than 770 attendees and the 12 workshops hosted. The ICTs and Youth track hosted 4 workshops that garnered over 300 attendees, of whom 53% were women and 47% were men. Participants joined the workshops from 42 different countries, with 41% coming from Western Europe and 32% from Asia and Australasia. The WSIS Action Line facilitation meetings have also been extremely successful, with a total of 1,200 attendees in the 8 workshops that took place throughout the forum. The ICTs and Gender Mainstreaming track hosted 10 workshops that garnered more than 800 attendees, who joined from 63 different countries, with 48% from Western Europe and 23% from Africa. The ICTs and Sports track hosted 8 workshops that garnered over 300 attendees, of whom 49% were women and 51% were men. In addition, 22% came from the private sector and 20% from international organizations. The ICTs and Accessibility for Persons with Disabilities and Specific Needs track hosted 5 workshops that garnered more than 440 attendees, who joined from 36 different countries. 5 sessions were held for the WSIS Prizes 2020 champions, where they could share success stories of WSIS action lines, implementation, and SDGs advancement. In these 5 sessions, more than 1,000 participants had the opportunity to learn how ICTs are making economic, social, and environmental impact on the ground around the world in 2020. The WSIS Prizes have been serving as a major international repository since 2012 for sharing and promoting good information and communication technology solutions that are advancing development. We would like to deeply thank our sponsors and partners who made all of this possible.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I should like to welcome you to this high-level dialogue today, where we have some very high-level speakers joining us. I am Yushi Torigoe, ITU Chief of Strategic Planning and Membership Department. As you all know, World Summit on the Information Society, WSIS, was a pioneering summit held in recognition of the vast changes the information and communication technologies can bring to transform our society, economy, and way of life. It was held 2 phases, in Geneva 2003 and Tunis 2005. As the UN Specialized Agency for ICTs, ITU plays an important role in the facilitation and implementation of the WSIS outcomes and 2030 agenda. WSIS action lines have withstood the test of time, where all 11 WSIS action lines have served as the framework for the implementation of the WSIS outcomes, organized according to the themes of Plan of Action. The WSIS Forum has evolved since 2009 to advance the concept of the information and knowledge societies, and has become the world's largest gathering of the ICT for development community. It is a fast-growing platform that provides a fully multi-stakeholder vision and identifies emerging trends while providing recommendation on the future of implementation of WSIS action lines. The WSIS Forum is introducing new topics to international community, including connectivity for older persons, esports, and youth. 15 years on, the concept of the information and knowledge societies is really becoming a reality for many millions of people around the world. According to ITU's largest statistics, some 3.6 billion people access the internet regularly, work, study, learn, shop, stay updated with latest health alerts, or simply stay in touch with family or friends. ITU's core mission to connect and connected, especially now during this pandemic, many millions more of people now benefit every day from the life-changing potential of ICT to improve their lives. This year, UN and international community is celebrating 75th anniversary of the UN, leading into the decade of action as called for UN Secretary General, Mr. Antonio Guterres, giving us 10 years to deliver the SDGs. However, there are still many millions more people for whom the internet and ICTs are not part of their everyday life. Bridging the digital gap and connecting the unconnected remain a serious challenge. ITU is working with all its many WSIS stakeholders to connect the unconnected. In this spirit, I should now like to ask you to watch a short video introducing the achievements and progress of 15 years of the WSIS process, which will be followed by panel discussion. A short video, please.
"15 years ago, the World Information Society, WSIS, was a groundbreaking summit held in anticipation of the vast, sweeping changes digital technologies would wreak on our society, our economy, and our very way of life. In many ways, the summit was a forward-looking summit, predicting a time when we would read our news online rather than from a newspaper, find our way by GPS rather than from a map, when leaders and actors could talk more on Twitter or Instagram rather than on television, when pupils and teachers would spend more time studying online rather than in a classroom, monitor the melting of the ice caps or find archaeological sites from satellite imagery from space rather than from the ground. The summit brought together many different players in recognition of how everyone is involved in shaping an internet beneficial for society and empowering for individuals. This multi-stakeholder model became accepted as the main way forward for the internet and information society. It also emphasized to governments and policymakers that digital technologies will transform society, and to benefit to the maximum, governments had to work with other actors to maximize connectivity across their country. Today, the issues raised by the summit remain more relevant than ever. But to really benefit from the digital revolution, we need you to join the WSIS movement and commit to connecting the unconnected, to enable everyone to benefit from digital technologies wherever they are and however they live. In future, for example, we'll be identified by our faces rather than our fingerprints, and money will be obsolete. We'll pay for goods from our digital wallet, stored in our wristband. Make sure you have your say, and join the WSIS movement to ensure that your views are taken into account in the future of the information society.
Thank you very much. Now I would like to introduce Mr. Mario Maniewicz, Director of Radiocommunication Bureau of ITU, to give opening remarks. Be our director, please.
Thank you, Yushi. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a pleasure to be speaking to you in this high-level dialogue on the day in which we celebrate the 15th anniversary of the World Summit on the Information Society. Let us look back to 2005. At that time, internet access to homes was provided mostly by the telephone network, either through an analog dial-up connection or through a digital subscriber line. Cable modem was picking up, and fiber to the home and mobile broadband connections were only just beginning. In fact, in 2005, there were only 220 million fixed broadband subscriptions, of which most of them, 67%, were in the developed world. Moreover, 3G was only starting to be deployed. Back then, representatives from all countries gathered in Tunis in the WSIS to reaffirm their desire to build a people-centered, inclusive, and development-oriented information society based on the purpose of multilateralism, so that people could use information and communication technologies to achieve what we then called the Millennium Development Goals. From 2005 to the present date, fixed broadband connections have increased fivefold, while mobile broadband connections such as 3G and 4G have increased 23 times. Today, we are over 6.3 billion active mobile broadband subscriptions, and over 53% of the world's population has access to the internet. With the COVID-19 crisis, we have witnessed the impact of being connected more than ever before. According to the World Bank, 294 billion emails are sent every day, and 65 billion WhatsApp messages, 5 billion searches, and the equivalent of 200 million DVDs of data are created daily. These figures show the tremendous expansion of the information and communication technologies and the great progress of the multi-stakeholder implementation of the WSIS action lines and their strengthened alignment with the Sustainable Development Goals. I'm very pleased to witness this progress, as I have been associated with the WSIS process since its inception, also in my previous role as Chief of the Policies and Strategies Department in the BDT, where I was directly involved in the implementation of the core WSIS action lines, where the ITU is a lead facilitator. In particular, Action Line C2 on ICT infrastructure, Action Line C5 on cybersecurity, and Action Line C6 on enabling environment. In my current role as Director of the Radiocommunication Bureau, I experienced firsthand how international cooperation is key to implement the WSIS Plan of Action. In fact, the collaboration between administrations, service providers, manufacturers, academia, and standardization bodies is what allows us to agree upon global radiocommunication regulations and standards that are then incorporated by countries throughout the world. Just recently, in the end of 2019, all stakeholders gathered in Egypt during the ITU World Radiocommunication Conference, the WRC, and revised the radio regulations. The conference improved and updated the international treaty that governs the use of radio frequency spectrum and satellite orbits around the world. This regulatory framework ensures that radio communication services can coexist and provides the stability required to attract investments and enable the exponential growth of the telecommunications and ICTs. Thus, while we acknowledge the advancements attained during the last 15 years, the radio communication sector of the ITU is working relentlessly to, first of all, ensure that all people are connected, reducing the digital divide, empowering women and girls, and enabling access to e-learning, e-employment, and e-health. Secondly, to ensure things and industries are connected, enabling e-agriculture, e-business, and the development of the Industry 4.0. And lastly, to ensure ICTs are used to the sustainable of the planet, enabling e-environment. WRC 19 opened the path for further innovation in the telecommunications and ICTs. New applications such as high-altitude platforms and non-geostationary satellite constellations promise to connect the unconnected, and new 5G applications promise to increase the efficiency of industries. In addition, the conference protected the science services to ensure that we can continue using satellites to monitor the Earth and obtain invaluable information from the land, the sea, and the atmosphere. Another very important decision taken by the conference and in line with the WSIS action plan was the approval of a gender declaration. This declaration brings to the forefront the need to support the participation and the leadership of women that act in the field of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. I look forward to continuing working with all WSIS stakeholders to ensure digital transformation of society and the best use of ICTs towards achieving the UN Digital Sustainable Development Goals. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Director, for your insightful opening. Now we begin our panel discussion, and I'd like to ask each speaker a question, and I'd like you to limit your intervention, if possible, maximum 4 minutes. I should like to ask our first speaker, Her Excellency, Ms. Katrina Naut, Ambassador Permanent Representative Mission of the Dominican Republic in Geneva. As you are aware, the Dominican Republic is the first Latin American and Caribbean member to chair the WSIS Forum. A lot has been said about small island states like Dominican Republic and particular challenges they face because of their dependency on the service sector. I'd like to ask Ambassador how you think ICT can help countries like Dominican Republic achieve resiliency in the face of unforeseen crises in the future. Ambassador, you have the floor.
Thank you very much for your question and for the invitation to ICT to participate in this panel. Well, certainly the Dominican Republic is an important services exporter, especially in Mode 2. We export tourism services, and in Mode 4, the Dominicans offer their services abroad and contribute to our country's development when they send remittance. Just to put into perspective, in the tourism sector in our country, there are over 500,000 people whose livelihoods depend directly on tourism, as well as some 8% of our GDP correspond to the tourism sector. On the other hand, remittance by Dominicans working abroad are so impactful that according to our central bank, the country will be 27% poorer in the absence of these transfers. Unfortunately, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the UN Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean is forecasting a reduction in tourism revenues in the magnitude of 60 to 70% compared to last year. Remittance were also affected by the economic downturn, and there was a reduction of 21% compared to last year. That is almost $150 million a month less in the pockets of our poorest households. Our vulnerability in the face of natural disasters, such as pandemics or climate change related events, has highlighted the importance of building better once the COVID-19 crisis passes. Our authorities understand how important it is for our services to clean up the value addition ladder. Making our services more sophisticated and knowledge-based is the key to achievement, resilience in the face of a future crisis, and growth in the long-term run. In the Dominican Republic, we have industries such as the business process outsourcing sector or call centers, employing over 40,000 Dominicans, mainly young people. This industry did not experience job losses to the extent other sectors did. Actually, their leaders have said that 60,000 new operator positions will be needed in the next 5 years. We know that better paying and more resilient jobs are being created in the knowledge economy. That is why we are training a new generation of ICT-enabled Dominican programmers, paralegals, software developers, etc. If in the past English language and some computer proficiency was enough for our young people to compete, now we understand that information technology literacy is the key to a career in the future economy. In the hospitality sector, the Dominican government is aware that industrial upgrading and diversification can only be possible if our small and medium enterprises that rely on foreign visitors, such as domestic tour operators, artisans, craftsmen, bars, restaurants, and the agricultural industry can have access to certifications, online training, best practices, and experience sharing with industry actors from around the world. All of these interactions are at the disposal only of those small businesses with ICT capabilities. Thousands of our small businesses owners have received training on ICT through the program República Digital, a government skill that aims to address the digital divide. But we are conscious that everything I have mentioned can only be achieved by bringing education to the forefront of public policy, which is why our government has made significant efforts for the betterment of education and establishing at the same time world-class ICT-oriented schools such as Technological Institute of the Americas. We are proud to see these efforts bear fruit. Just a few days ago, Dominican students won the first place at the Human Exploration Rover Challenge, a science contest organized by NASA in which students were challenged to design a security system for a space exploration vehicle. Similarly, students from our Technological Institute of the Americas won the first place at the Huawei ICT competition 2018 that took place in Shenzhen, China. We know there is still a lot more to do and to learn. The WSIS Forum has brought to us fresh thoughts, new ideas, and insights from policymakers, industry leaders, academics, scientists from around the world. After watching and participating in the various workshops and policy sessions of the forum, we have gathered more inspiration to continue our work in the Dominican Republic. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, for sharing an innovative experience and initiative. As you know, ICTs facilitate all processes. So we are very happy to have Minister of Communications of Republic of Ghana, Her Excellency Ms. Ursula Owusu-Ekuful. Ghana has been an active participant in the WSIS Forum activities. We are in the midst of the global challenge of fight against coronavirus. How has the technology impacted on the government of Ghana's response to COVID-19 challenges, and what is going to be the impact in shaping the digital future of Ghana? Minister, are you on board?
Yes, I am. Thank you. Thank you very much. And it's a pleasure to join you at the WSIS Forum this morning as we celebrate 15 years of this very useful intervention. Permit me to first of all convey the warm felicitations of the President of the Republic to the entire WSIS community for sustaining this process. Ghana remains committed to the attainment of the universal digital inclusion goals of WSIS, which are also linked to the attainment of the sustainable development goals. And the emergence of this pandemic has brought in its wake the need for the adoption of multidisciplinary and multi-stakeholder approaches aided by the deployment of appropriate technology to combat the menace. And this is the path that Ghana is treading upon. We needed to provide more provisioning of spectrum to assist our telecoms service providers deal with the surge in the use of digital platforms and the congestion that it engendered. And so we introduced the policy of extended spectrum allocation for free to the telecommunications networks. And the release of the spectrum enabled service providers to provide adequate bandwidth capacity to minimize network congestion. And it offered more opportunity for people to study and work from home. This is one of the major interventions which has had a positive impact on not just the education sector, but on the services sector as well. Tertiary institutions have used improved internet capacity to continue their academic work, and most examinations for the current semester are over, many of them done virtually. Continuing students in the secondary schools are also benefiting from a number of online classes delivered through the medium of television broadcasts. And as an outcome of the collaboration between the ICT and education sectors and private broadcasting agencies, over 100 educational sites, e-learning platforms, and libraries were also zero rated. The government had to institute an online virtual working platform for public sector workers to be able to also work virtually. And that was also used, utilized on the Microsoft platform, which we have dubbed a smart workplace. We have also been enabled. We set up an application, a COVID tracker application, which is the first on, and my information is that is the first in Africa on both Google and App Store, which has geofencing capabilities and enabled individuals to report their symptoms themselves to facilitate contact tracing. This has also enabled us to identify hotspots and send timely alerts to individuals and the Ghana Health Service to facilitate containment of the virus. We've also pioneering a Pan-Bias application, which is a Pan-African initiative to digitize all port health systems and COVID test systems, and to also track meetings and conferences and events to ease the opening up of our economies and ensure a secure trust system to be built for the COVID testing initiative, which most countries have put in place to ensure that they can safely open their borders. Ghana opened our airports on the 1st of September, and we're utilizing the learnings from which will be used by most African countries and the African Union, since we're working in partnership with the AU and Africa CDC as well. We also have instituted several emergency control systems, but we need to look beyond the pandemic and build resilient systems going forward. And so we intend to digitize our educational infrastructure at all levels. We are providing Wi-Fi for all senior high schools. We're leveraging on a campus network built by Ghana Academic Research Network in partnership with the ministry to provide internet access to all our public universities, and a learning management system as well for a simplified, unified platform for all of them to deliver virtual content to their students and facilitate blended learning initiatives using both traditional systems of learning and online platforms as well. The impact of technology has been profound in helping us navigate the COVID pandemic. Digital skills is key. We are establishing a strong cybersecurity system as well, intensifying our efforts to connect our rural communities with the rural telephony project. And I end by saying that we're ensuring gender equality, equity, and parity, so women and girls may participate fully in the deployment of ICT as well. These will all be mainstreamed, and to ensure that no one is left behind. So these are some of the steps that Ghana is taking to help us navigate this pandemic for now and in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister, for joining this session and sharing the latest experience in this difficult situation. Now I'd like to call Mr. Thomas Schneider, Ambassador and Director of International Affairs, Swiss Federal Office of Communication, OFCOM. How has Switzerland been involved in this WSIS process over the last 15 years, and how do you evaluate the results so far? And what do you expect from WSIS plus 20 in the future? Ambassador, please.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, clear. Thank you.
Yes. Ministers, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. Switzerland has hosted, as you may remember, the first phase of the World Summit on the Information Society 2003 in Geneva, and is proud to be with you again at the WSIS Forum 15 years after Tunis. We have been committed to ensuring that the implementation is inclusive and that everyone can benefit from the new opportunities. The implementation should foster freedoms and innovation online while building on mutual respect and solidarity. All implementation processes need to follow principles of good governance and need to be transparent and accountable to all people in the world, taking into account different needs and cultures and building on the respective roles and responsibilities of all stakeholders, governments, businesses, civil society, and the technical and academic community. All these processes should act in the global public interest and not just in the interests of those few who have the means to be at the forefront of the technical and economic development. The Swiss commitment in the WSIS follow-up and implementation is built on our tradition of a participatory bottom-up political system that couples freedom and self-determination with responsibility, solidarity, and respect for cultural and political diversity. Switzerland has always been a strong supporter of dialogue and capacity building platforms like the WSIS Forum and the Global UN Internet Governance Forum, the IGF. These platforms provide opportunities for an open and inclusive dialogue with all stakeholders from all over the world. Since 2005, we have achieved a lot, but not yet fully reached our goals. In the past months, for instance, the corona pandemic has shown that access is still not a given. Even in developed countries like Switzerland, some families had to be connected to the internet before their children could participate in homeschooling during the corona lockdown. So making sure that everyone has access is necessary, but it's not sufficient. People also need to be empowered to use these new technologies safely and efficiently. And as the pandemic has shown to us very clearly, they need to be empowered to differ quality information from misinformation, independent of whether this is spread by private or state sources. For us, it is clear that it is upon governments and companies to earn the trust of citizens and users. Otherwise, they will avoid using digital tools. We are currently seeing how concerns about abuse of personal data prevent COVID tracking applications from being used to their full potential in Europe and elsewhere. If we now look forward, one of our main tasks is to together develop a framework that allows all people, regardless of gender, age, or origin, to decide themselves, but with respect of others, how to take advantage of new opportunities. Above all, we must close existing gaps in the digital governance architecture. For this, we must work with all interest groups. Current processes sometimes reach their limits, which is why we need new forms of effective, transparent, and accountable interdisciplinary global digital cooperation with all relevant actors. Too often, fundamental issues and governance approaches continue to be addressed in institutional silos that are not inclusive. So 15 years ago, we laid the basis for an inclusive interdisciplinary dialogue. We created the UN IGF and the WSIS Forum. Both have importantly contributed to improve cooperation in the digital environment. But today, this open inclusive dialogue is still necessary, but again, no longer sufficient. As highlighted by the recommendations of the UN Secretary General's high-level panel on digital cooperation, we need an approach to digital cooperation and governance that is agile, more inclusive, and better coordinated. These recommendations, as well as the UN Secretary General's roadmap on digital corporations, are major milestones in this. So in 5 years' time, we will have another milestone in the history of developing an inclusive, people-centered, and development-oriented information society. This will be the WSIS Plus 20 review. This means that we do now have 5 years' time to jointly develop a digital cooperation and governance architecture on which we will be hopefully agreeing to and will be appropriate for the digitally connected world of the 21st century, starting with implementing the UN Secretary General's roadmap. So Switzerland fundamentally believes that inclusive, multi-stakeholder and cross-silo cooperation are prerequisites for the creation of a human-centered, free and secure digital world. We are therefore fully committed to work with all of you, also International Geneva, with institutions like the ITU can be helpful in this regard. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, for sharing your experience as host country of WSIS and the recent situation. His Excellency Mr. Mohsen Baharvand, Deputy Foreign Minister for Legal and International Affairs, Iran. So the question is, since 2005 summit, we have now enough experience to evaluate the WSIS. Iran, one of the leading developing countries, had an active role in the WSIS process. After 15 years, let me ask this question. How do you evaluate the outcomes and achievements of WSIS? What are the key achievements and what went wrong, if any? Deputy Foreign Minister, please.
Thank you, Mr. Coordinator. Can you hear me, please?
Yes, clear. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. In fact, that's a very critical question because it helps us to make a roadmap for the future of the WSIS. Of course, as has been said by other speakers, we have so many achievements by the WSIS. The technology is now more developed. Some cooperation among the states are also strengthened. But we think that still WSIS has some mandates from the mandates is far from delivering its mandates. As we know, as a developing country, we can say that some of the mandates, such as internet governance, enhanced cooperation, digital divide, all these problems still exist among the WSIS members or participants, if you like. And these issues has not been resolved yet. Maybe we have to look into it. What is the problem that we cannot resolve these remaining issues on the agenda unresolved? Maybe we can devise a roadmap for the future. I think in the field of technology, not only ICT, in all the fields of technology, always remains some issues that cannot be resolved at the international level. As far as the ICT is concerned, we have, I think, 4 areas such as governance, human rights, and digital world, which is connected to the sovereignty, and also technology and digital divide. There is a gap. If you like, we have to be pragmatic. There is a gap between the countries, which is more or less a kind of, first of all, ideological problem. And secondly, a gap between the development and technology-wise development of the country. Therefore, always in all the forums in regard with these kind of issues, we have this problem unresolved. As I have a limited time, let me be very result-oriented in my approach, that what is the problem there and how can we resolve that problems and maybe put them aside, the controversial issues, and then take steps forward. My idea is that first of all, we have to think on the cooperation and enhance cooperation, not in the field of the controversial issues, but in the field of the issues such as e-health, environment, natural disasters, agriculture, and the issues like that. But the practical steps should be taken in that regard without resolving some of the problems which are philosophical or, let's say, ideological problems. I don't think that we need to resolve all of the problems, then start cooperation in the field of the technical issues. That's one thing. And secondly, I think we have to enhance South-South cooperation. I don't think that by any means in the near future we have the full cooperation among all member states and around the globe. Therefore, I think South-South cooperation may be a major issue. It means that it's better that the South countries, they cooperate, they share experience and information, and they enhance regional and also at the level of development create some groups and cooperate among themselves. As the national issues, as regarded the national issues in connection with the ICT, I think some national laws are needed to resolve some of the problems which are not really connected to the technology like ICT. For example, the issue of sovereignty or the application of governing law in the field of ICT can be established by national measures, and it's not needed to be discussed at international level. Therefore, what I can say that as we continue with WSIS and global discussion in any other forum, I think that some of the issues should go to a separate committee or commission like that to discuss the controversial issues. Then regional and South-South cooperation are needed for the developing countries. And also some of the issues should be left for the national legislations to resolve that problem. That could be all my contribution to this panel. Thank you very much, Mr. Courtney.
Thank you very much, Deputy Minister, for sharing very insightful thoughts. Next, Dr. Daniela Brönstrup, Deputy Director General for Digital and Innovation Policy, German Federal Ministry for Economic Affairs and Energy, Germany. The question is, what have we achieved so far, and how can the WSIS process become even more fruitful? Deputy Director General, please.
Thank you very much for that interesting question. Ministers, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, hello everyone. Well, measuring the success of an international conference is very difficult, at least by quantitative figures. However, I think we all know how important it is to meet and to exchange views. What I personally miss right now during the pandemic is meeting with others and being creative, getting new impulses, for example, that can international conferences provide. So in my view, the main value of WSIS is bringing together important decision makers from industry, from research and politics from all over the world. And then those decision makers talk about new trends in the ICT sector, about common challenges, common projects and policies, and that on a very broad level, and I think that is important. During the last 15 years, Germany has always supported these important multi-stakeholder meetings. And when I say Germany, I do not mean the government, but I also mean civil society and the private sector. The private sector's participation has had top representatives of major international companies at the WSIS. For example, the German global player Siemens was very much engaged in the WSIS process. And what we have seen during the film right at the beginning, it is not only the number of participants that is really impressive, but it is also the diversity of topics and events. People wouldn't have engaged in WSIS if they hadn't seen the benefit of that conference and that important possibility to meet. And that is why I would like also to say thank you and call all of you to pay tribute to the ITU that they have not canceled the WSIS Forum 2020. It was a really great idea to transform the format to that virtual way. Ladies and gentlemen, let's also take a look what WSIS could look like in the future. I do not hope that, but it could be that we will have to do that again in a virtual format. And then I personally would suggest to maybe shortening the forum to 2 weeks and focus it on special topics. That would of course mean that we would have to limit also participants, but maybe that could help to really enhance discussion between the participants. And that would also have the possibility to concentrate on a few very up-to-date topics, not letting aside all the others important parts that should be discussed as well, of course. And in the case, what I hope, that we will have a physical meeting again, then we should have in mind that there was already a concept for the physical meeting 2020, and that envisaged different formats beyond the pure statements, but more interaction. And I think that was a really good idea, because in my view, what we need is strengthening the WSIS strength, and that is bringing up new ideas and new visions, having discussions about these ideas, and having interactions in workshops and in hackathons. Ladies and gentlemen, Germany is ready to work with you to create those new formats to further development of the WSIS Forum and to contribute to the ITU's mission that is committed to connecting the world. And that is what we should all aim at. And maybe I can come back to my colleague, Thomas Schneider, who mentioned before the IGF process. From the bottom of my heart, I'm deeply engaged also in that process. And maybe I take the chance to remind you that together with our partners of the UAE, we have been the so-called champions, I would say the moderators and facilitators of the roadmap process. And we have just submitted to the UN Secretary General our options paper for further developing that important IGF process. I'm looking forward to working with you together on further developing this international multi-stakeholder forum. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Deputy Director General, for very valuable and specific advice. Next, Mr. Jorge Chediek, Director and Envoy of the Secretary General on South-South Cooperation, United Nations Office for South-South Cooperation. What is the role of South-South Cooperation in addressing the digital divide in countries, and how can the South-South Cooperation collaborate with this process towards the addressing this important challenge? Director Chediek, please.
Thank you very much for the invitation. And South-South Cooperation was born as an expression of solidarity. And for the many years, it did not have that much substance. But this century, or in a way coincidentally with the holding of WSIS, it really expanded dramatically in scope and volume, considering that many countries of the South have achieved significant results in their development processes, including through the utilization of technologies in their economic and social progress. Therefore, the South, in addition to becoming an increasingly important actor in the global space, generated significant practices and valuable practices that could be utilized by other countries. So therefore, South-South cooperation has become, in the context of the global development architecture, in the challenge we have to achieve the sustainable development goals, an essential element. I would like to salute and thank the Deputy Minister of Iran for mentioning South-South cooperation as critical in the space related to WSIS. And it is because the Global South has the biggest challenges, and at the same time, it has the biggest opportunities in terms of jumping through different development stages. Among the challenges, we have the lack of coverage. Our first speaker made a very good point that more than half the population has now access to internet compared with a very small proportion of the world at the time of WSIS. But that means that almost half the population do not have access. And most of the people who do not have access are in the developing world. And less than 20% of people in LDCs, in least developed countries, have access to the internet. So therefore, we have first a challenge of expanding access and infrastructure. And that can be achieved through North-South cooperation, which is the traditional modality of collaboration, obviously through private investment and the multi-stakeholder partnerships that WSIS proposes, but also through increased engagement in South-South cooperation, because the collaboration among countries of the South generates economies of scales and generates opportunities at the geographic space, as the Iranian Deputy Minister mentioned, with the idea of establishing regional networkings. that will facilitate the expansion of coverage. So that is one particular space. Then also moving from the expansion of the infrastructure also to the sharing of regulatory frameworks. The idea that having frameworks that facilitate the expansion of access and coverage, and at the same time promote the utilization of the technologies in a way that facilitates social and economic development. So that is a second area where they can work. The other area where they can work is the establishment of networks of e-commerce and networks of economic collaboration, which is an area that already has significant experiences. We have platforms that provide access to producers from the South to the global market, and there is much more that can be done. And also in this area, we have to emphasize the collaboration with countries of the North. In addition, we have to find ways to expand the gender dimension, because we are finding also a divide at the gender level, particularly in the global South. So it is very important that in the context of South-South cooperation, we share the regulatory frameworks and the social attitudes that allow women to participate more actively in information technology, and also taking advantage of the opportunities the fourth generation economy generates. As I'm reaching the limit of my presentation, I have several other things to say, but I want to highlight that our office produced a report on information technology for development that was launched last year, an independent report. I invite the interested persons to check for it. And also we have the institutional commitment in the context of the joint UN plan to work with the leadership of ITU in making sure that information technology becomes a vehicle for development and for the integration and progress of the global South. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Director, for sharing insightful thought on South-South cooperation, which is a key area for WSIS. Next, Mr. Peter Major, Chair, United Nations Commission on Science and Technology for Development, UNCSTD. What would be the priorities for the next 5 years and towards WSIS plus 20 and further beyond? Mr. Major, please.
First of all, thank you very much for inviting me to this high-level dialogue session. And thank you, Yushi, for the important question. The United Nations Commission on Science and Technology for Development, the CSTD, for which I currently serve as chair, is mandated by member states to do the system-wide follow-up to the WSIS. This is a critical part of the CSTD's and a very active involvement not only of governments, but also civil society, academia, and technical community, and the private sector. Based on the considerable body of knowledge accumulated through the discussions at the CSTD Secretariat at UNCTAD launched a new publication during this year's WSIS Forum entitled 15 Years Since the World Summit on the Information Society, which directly relates to our dialogue today, and which I will base part of my response to your question. By the way, this publication is now available on the UNCTAD website, unctad.org. Looking ahead towards WSIS plus 20 and beyond, I think that together with some of the original challenges that were identified at WSIS, although many of which have taken new forms as technologies have evolved, it will be necessary to pay attention to challenges that were either not considered at that time or that have become more problematic. This includes cybersecurity, where governments and businesses have been increasingly facing threats and that could reduce the trust and potential development value of online services and resources. Number two, the governance of harmful content, which include misinformation and disinformation that have potential negative effects on social and political systems. And finally, privacy rights and data protection for which the exploitation of personal data by online corporations have become a large concern. These and other challenges need to be addressed in a context in which data are central to the new policy and business environment, but are highly concentrated in a handful of stakeholders and countries. Another new development that will affect all responses to the challenges of information society is that the pace of change has accelerated and its direction is becoming harder to predict with ever faster technological innovation in ICTs. This limits the ability of people and organizations to adapt and respond. One common element of all these challenges is that they are all transcend national boundaries. For example, the transnational character of leading data corporations and non-physical character of online services raise complex questions about data ownership, jurisdiction, and regulation. Different legal frameworks governing content, criminality, and data protection have created opportunities to bypass national jurisdictions. It is also widely recognized that issues of cybersecurity require seamless global cooperation if they are to be addressed effectively, and that's where I would like to join Mr. Schneider's statement as well. At CSCD, we have been emphasizing the importance of multi-stakeholder engagement to address these truly global challenges that affect everyone and have provided the platform for the discourse and cooperation about the information society in our era. In the end, accelerating technological change will affect everyone, but not everyone is participating in setting the space and the direction of the change at the moment. It is vital that a diversity of stakeholders become actively involved and heard for more effective policies and programs. To guide this discourse and cooperation, as well as making more progress in WSIS implementation, there are two more elements that I think are essential. One is the evidence and the data. For instance, the vast majority of data derived from digital behavior, for which would help identify impacts, are held by corporations, not by governments. And national statistical systems in many developing countries remain relatively weak. Decision makers in government need to have better access to data, particularly disaggregated data by gender, age, income level, disabilities, and other dimensions, to address the needs of different groups within society. Another element is the foresight analysis. Technological change today can be so rapid that it has impacts on society, sometimes that are irreversible, before governments and other stakeholders can put in place legal and regulatory frameworks. Considering the potential large impacts that technological change can bring to society, I think we cannot afford to just sit and wait and see what happens. For this foresight analysis, I believe stakeholders and experts who are joining WSIS Forum are best positioned to take on this important task, and we need to count on your wisdom. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Major, for sharing valuable thoughts from UN body where WSIS is reporting to. Next, Professor Bartami Minkin, Chair of the ITU Council Working Group on WSIS and SDG, Russian Federation. You have been involved in the WSIS process since its inception. Please, can you share some of the key updates and highlights in the evolution of the WSIS process from your point of view? Professor Minkin, please.
Thank you very much, Yushi. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure and honor for me to participate at the forum that is being held just 15 years after the WSIS summit, in the middle of the period between 2015 and 2025 on the overall review of the WSIS outcomes implementation. It's time to provide intermediate assessment of them in close interconnection with achieving SDGs. Forum undoubtedly serves as an effective platform for monitoring the implementation of these action lines, as well as for providing information and analysis of its role for achieving the SDGs. The topic of digital transformation, which is at the center of the forum discussion this year is an integral driver of the process of achieving the SDGs and ensuring that no one is left behind, and applications and services based on the use of ICT are becoming key drivers of such transformation towards digital economy. When we talk about bridging the digital divide, we should clearly understand that it is necessary to simultaneously provide the population with access to telecommunication ICTs, and especially to broadband. It is extremely important to take political, regulatory, educational, technical, and social measures that will help in creation of the necessary environment for the development of the relevant infrastructure, required digital services and digital skills in all social groups. The difficult tasks could be implemented with involvement of all interested parties, including governments, international organizations, private educational organizations, different societies, etc. We are grateful to ITU as the initiator of the WSIS process and the organizer of the annual WSIS forums, together with other organizations of the UN system and all stakeholders, and for opportunity to exchange views and best practice in the further development of the information and knowledge societies and the achievement of SDGs. The WSIS forum has evolved into the key worldwide event on telecommunications and ICTs, an efficient mechanism for a multi-stakeholder implementation of WSIS action lines at the SDGs, focusing on digital divide, trust and security, accessibility, gender equality, youth and older persons, knowledge creation, and the sharing of good practice, including coping with the COVID-19 related challenges. The COVID-19 pandemic has clearly demonstrated the need for high quality communication infrastructure and for collection and dissemination of relevant information to assist public safety, health, the disaster relief agencies, and to ensure continuity in the educational process and safeguard jobs, especially for SMEs, by making use of the possibilities offered by telecommunication ICTs to mitigate the social impact and to embrace global economy in its sustainable and comprehensive recovery. The virtual, distributed over the time format of the forum, choosing which was forced by the pandemic, has showed excellent results and allowed attracting a much larger number of participants from all over the world than ever before. It seems appropriate to use in future a mixed format of organizing the forum, virtual events before the forum, and then face-to-face meetings that will allow to share views directly. Considering the WSIS Forum 2020 achievements, we have to look 5 years ahead. It might be reasonable if all action line facilitators with full involvement of the WSIS stakeholders concerned provide an analysis of the implementation of WSIS outcomes for all action lines, the achieved result, highlighting emerging issues, and what should be done to achieve the need targets by 2025, taking into account facilitation of achieving the relevant SDGs by 2030. The components of the WSIS process, like WSIS Forum, UNGs, WSIS Prices, stock-taking database, and others, display examples of good digital cooperation amongst different stakeholders to ensure that efforts by stakeholders and across the UN system are coherent, connected, and coordinated to achieve maximum sustainable impact. And we should already start thinking on possible further action and beyond 2025. In conclusion, let me thank ITU team and all other colleagues for excellent preparation on the forum under such critical circumstances. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Minkin, for sharing insightful thought as a leader for ITU Council discussion on WSIS. Next, Ms. Purnima Megan Mana from civil society. She's a director of youth development, Shilpa Suraya Foundation. And congratulations, you are the WSIS Prize champion 2020 in the category 5 for the project Next Generation Girls Internet Security Ambassadors. According to your experience and participation in the WSIS process, what do you think are the advantages and how can we work towards the further involving youth in this process? Please.
Thank you, Yushi, and thank you for this opportunity to be among such distinguished speakers and be in this panel. So, so like I said just now, like speaking among all these distinguished guests and speakers excite me because ICT for Development and the work Shilpa Sayara Foundation in Sri Lanka did and the WSIS process is actually what paved the way for me to be here today. So my speech, I would like to start first with my journey. So Sri Lanka actually started the ICT for Development work around 2005 at the same time that WSIS process started. So my father actually started a project called Shilpa Sayara Project, which was one of the first projects for e-society in Sri Lanka. And Shilpa Sayara enabled access to local language e-learning for marginalized students through rural telecenters. The concept of Shilpa Sayara Project was actually based on WSIS action lines. I participated in this Shilpa Sayara program as a beneficiary, and today I'm leading the Shilpa Sayara programs as the director of Shilpa Sayara Foundation. The opportunities created by Shilpa Sayara enabled me to connect with local as well as global partners. And Internet Society actually enabled me my first experience to become a panelist, and that was at WSIS Forum 2016. So since then, I've continued my journey connecting with global and local communities and working towards girls' technology education. So I think this story of mine is the best example I can provide you about empowerment in ICT for development. In this process, ICT and internet played a major role. So now, looking at the 2030 agenda, what worries me is the people that would be left behind. And they are mainly those who are not connected and those who are using local languages. Among these people, a major portion is girls and women. So if we look at the world consists of actually 50% women. But if we look at the ICT industry, it does not represent this percentage of women's participation. And we are all aware that the post-COVID-19 society is driven by technology. The World Economic Forum estimates that 60% of global GDP would be digitized by 2022. So my question is, how are we going to include girls and women in this sustainable development? According to our work and our research with girls and women and technology, we've realized that girls and women need access to internet, e-skills development, local language content, and constant engagement to gain ICT skills for education, employment, and economy, which are key goals in sustainable development. I'm currently engaged in increasing girls' participation in technology. The young girls we train today would contribute to the sustainable development, employment, and economy by 2030. And in the future, becoming mothers, they would transfer this ICT knowledge and skills to their families and children, thereby helping bridging the digital gap long term. So this is not just an idea. It's a strategy built on gender equality, inclusion, localization, capacity building, ICT for development, and access to knowledge, which are WSIS action lines. So the next thing is, I'm asking you, can we have a special focus on girls, developing girls in technology in the next 10 years before 2030? So when we talk about girls' technology education, another major thing that comes up is the constraints. Cultural restrictions, mobility issues, language, and lack of opportunities are few of these constraints for girls to engage with technology. Based on my experience as a girl in technology, my development was a result of Shilpa Sayara Foundation's programs. Shilpa Sayara built an open platform based on ICT that helped me reach my full potential. And Shilpa Sir enabled this opportunity for young girls all over Sri Lanka to learn ICT at a very young age so they can also reach their full potential. And we have been very successful with this program so far. So finally, my argument is to achieve sustainable development goals by 2030, we need to strengthen girls' ICT education. And we have to do this by ensuring inclusion, equality, localization, empowerment, and innovation. And most importantly, creating global partnerships. So I would like to invite you all to partner with us and promote this idea to help girls learn technology, and so we can achieve the sustainable development goals by 2030. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Megan Mana, for sharing a valuable thought on your youth and girls topic. Thank you. The timing is running. We need to finish by 2:15 o'clock. So we sum up one key question. We have a couple of questions. Thank you very much for this active question and contribution. I wish to ask this question. What is ITU and other UN agency doing for this COVID crisis? I think this is a very burning question. Every agency is working hard to share experience and to respond to this challenge. So can I ask this question to two speakers, to BR Director and the Director of UNOSSC. First, Director BDT, please. BR, please. Mr. Maniewicz, are you on board? If not, can I ask UNOSSC, South-South Cooperation, to respond this question?
Repeat the last part of the question, please.
Yes, what is, this is part of UNOSSC. What, from your organization, doing for this COVID situation? How you respond to this challenge of this crisis?
COVID has really represented a major challenge to development activities. Development, after all, is an interpersonal endeavor which really requires a lot of human contact. And in a way, the fact that we have these information technologies that we did not have 15 years ago at this scale is allowing us to continue many of the efforts, although with severe handicaps. What are we doing? On one hand, we are working on the systematization of knowledge of how developing countries are fighting the pandemic. We have a database, which is well more than a database, a site called South-South Galaxy, which is a space that has the participation of over 200 institutions. And in Galaxy, we have created a repository of good practices, and not just good practices, but also a space to generate partnerships among countries and organizations of the Global South to exchange activities. Also, we have mobilized some resources, relatively modest considering the scale of the program. We have redirected funds, and also we have engaged partners in the donation of products in kind, particularly PPE and other elements to fight the pandemic. And we have succeeded in mobilizing the private sector to donate millions of masks, face masks, for instance, and garments and other products. So the South has been mobilized, but I think the main contribution is the knowledge and the space where countries and organizations of the South can share their experiences on all the phases of fighting the pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Indeed, in fact, this area is a common experience. From ITU side, we launched this WSIS TalkX from the early stage of COVID situation. And also we initiated part of a WSIS stock-taking process, we launched the ICT case studies, case repository. So we are sharing this experience of global challenge to this situation. Thank you very, very much. Thank you for the question, and of course, very insightful and valuable thoughts from panelists. So as the time is running, I wish to close this session. In conclusion, I should like to observe that the WSIS played a pioneering role in highlighting the contribution that ICTs make in transforming our society, economy, and way of life. We have achieved a great progress and many things still to be done at the same time. Broadband networks need to be much faster and deployed in rural areas to connect the remaining 3.1 billion people without regular access to the internet, among others. So this is ITU core mission. And thank you very much for a very active contribution and questions. Thank you very much. See you again. Thank you.
Thank you.